Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our weekly question and answer session with the coach. Today, we're talking about networking, how to network, how to get how to generate leads and inquiries into your business from networking events. And I believe that we have a number of questions. Karen, were you going to pose the questions, or shall I pose them and I can answer them at the same time?
Yeah, you can ask and answer at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, so we've had some questions for the session today, and the first question is, how can I establish a strong and memorable first impression that helps me to stand out from the crowd at networking events? Well, I think before we do that, we need to go back a step, because the first thing to say about networking events is that you really need to plan before you turn up. A lot of people see a networking event, they think, oh, it's just turning up, it's just engaging with people, having some conversations, drinking tea or coffee, whatever it might be. And as long as you're reasonably extrovert, that shouldn't be too hard. But actually, if you're going to really work the room, if you're going to really make use of your time, you need to plan how you're going to do it. And we'll cover some of the things you need to cover with the other questions that are being asked today. So, how do you establish a strong and memorable first impression? Well, this takes a little bit of time, but you need to think of something to say about yourself that is not run of the mill. So typically, if somebody asks you what you do, don't tell them your job title. Tell them about the outcomes that you achieve with people. So for example, if you are an accountant and somebody comes up and says, what do you do? Don't say, I'm an accountant. If they're old like me, they'll probably say, but you really wanted to be a lion tamer, didn't you? However, say something like, I help companies pay less tax. I'm a business coach. To be honest, nobody wants to be coached, but everybody would like to help with with finding solutions to the problems they have in their business. So if somebody asks me what I do, I call myself a business growth specialist, or I say I help people to make a lot more money. So you want a hook, you want something that's going to attract people's attention, and that's the best way to create a strong and memorable first impression. Think about what you're going to say to people, make it interesting, don't make it simply a recitation of your job title, because that's not very interesting. And you want to engage people, and you want them to ask you more questions. So if I say, I'm a business growth specialist, and they say, oh, what's that? Then I can say, oh, well, I work with businesses. So for example, I have a client who does this, and over the last 6 months, I've helped him to grow the profit in his business by 25%. So you engage them, you get them curious about what you do, and hopefully you start to engage them in conversation. So other ways to establish a strong and memorable first impression: be smart, don't turn up looking scruffy. You want to look good. Depending on what your behavioral profile is, if you're a D or an I, you're going to want to look good anyway, but you want to stand out. You want to be dressed better than the average person in the room. Also, make sure that, because a lot of networking events, you get the opportunity to speak. Normally you get a certain amount of time, typically 60 seconds, to talk about what it is that you're doing. So make sure that you're talking loudly, you're projecting, so that everybody can hear you, and work on the techniques I've just described of talking about what you do in terms of the consequences that you create, the impact you have on people. So key techniques, key conversation starters. We've got a question here about what are some key techniques or conversation starters I can use to initiate meaningful conversations and build prospects with build connections with prospects. So the conversation starter is very simple. Everybody likes to talk about themselves. They're much more interested in talking about themselves than they are in hearing you talk about yourself. Although ultimately you will want to talk to them a little bit about what you do. So, very simple question: what do you do? Ask people what they do. Ask people, once you've established what they do, what they do, ask them, what are they responsible for in their business? If you're interested in somebody who perhaps is a purchasing manager who might want to buy the things that you sell, then you're going to be really interested if you can find that out. So ask people what they're responsible for. But the thing is, ask them questions, because it doesn't really matter what the questions are, as long as you've got some reasonable ones, and 2 or 3 of them, you will start conversations. Now, if the person is a business owner, perhaps they work at a business, ask them, who are good contacts for you? What sort of people do you want to meet? So think about asking questions about them, and keep the conversation about them, because at a networking event, what will happen is that after a certain amount of time, they will feel slightly guilty that they've been talking about themselves and they haven't asked you a question. And so if you leave a pregnant pause between your questions, just a few seconds, long enough for them to say something if they want to, at some point they're going to turn around and say, well, so tell me, what do you do? And that's when you start with your first impression, your statement about how you help people, rather than what your job description is. So the third question I've been asked is, how can I effectively communicate the unique value proposition of my business during networking events without coming across as too sales oriented? So a very good question, because the most important thing to realize at any networking event is that people have not gone there to be sold to, which is ironic, because every single person in that room is there to sell. But each individual has gone there to find out how they can sell, what opportunities are available for them, not for other people to sell to them. But the easy thing is, remember, you're not trying, if you're at a networking event, your goal is not to make a sale. That's the thing that people get wrong sometimes. Your goal is to set up a second meeting. Because at a networking event, if you're ever going to get around the room and talk to all the people you want to, you really haven't got time to spend longer than 4 or 5 minutes with each person. So your objective is to establish enough of a relationship, enough engagement with the people that you meet, that you have an opportunity to talk to them subsequently. So you're going to arrange a face-to-face meeting, you're going to arrange a Zoom meeting, but that's the ultimate objective. And that is not salesy. When I'm talking to people at networking events, I always say to them, I have a lot of clients who are business owners. I have a very large network of people that I know in all sorts of different sectors. I'm always interested to find new people who do interesting things that might be relevant to my clients or to other businesses that I know. So I position it as, I can help them to find sources for whatever it is that they're selling. So remember, you're not looking to make a sale at a networking event. If you go in with a heavy-handed sales approach, people will not want to talk to you. Your objective is to engage people, to pique their interest sufficiently that they want to have a conversation with you for 20 minutes or so when you get out of that room. So, what are some effective ways to follow up with potential leads after a networking event to further nurture the relationship? So, there are lots of things that you can do to follow up. And it's worthwhile just pausing at this point to say that one of the most important aspects of attending a networking event is the subsequent follow-up. There is no point in going to a networking event, taking time out of your day to go and meet all these people if you then don't do something with the people whose details you've collected. So, lots of things that you can do to follow up with people. In my business, we send people a postcard with a little message on the back. Remember to call them. Call them or send them an email, because your ultimate objective, as we just said, is to get a second meeting. So you need to arrange either a Zoom meeting or a face-to-face meeting with them. And that's where you're going to really go into detail about what you do. You're going to find out what they do, and you're going to look for synergies and opportunities between your two businesses. So, follow up, make a phone call, send them a postcard. If you've got a PA in the business, you could get them to follow up and to talk to them and to see if they could set up a meeting. There may be other things that you can do. And
just think about this point. What about social media and other ways? I mean, more digital ways. Maybe not to follow up, but maybe to have kind of the continuity in the connections, or
Yeah, absolutely. I was just about, thank you for prompting me, but I was just about to mention that, Karen. So if you're not in, so once you've established who these people are, you've got their business card, it's the follow-up, connect with them on social media. Find out what social media they use. Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Are they on LinkedIn? Whatever it is, you need to follow up and connect with them on the social media that they're actively using. If you've been to a good networking event, post about it. Tag everybody that you met into the post so that they can see that you're talking about them. So that's another great way of breaking the ice and establishing a stronger relationship, getting to know the person before you have that subsequent follow-up. So in fact, the next question that somebody asked was, how can I leverage social media and digital platforms to extend my networking reach and engage with potential leads beyond the event itself? That's really social media. So very often people will publicize events on LinkedIn. It's possible for you to then go on to that event and see who says that they're going to be attending. So in advance of going to the event itself, you could actually go to the page around the event, identify who's going to be there, look them up, see who you particularly want to talk to. So this is all part of that preparation I mentioned at the very beginning. You need to do your homework before you go to a networking event. If you can find out who's going to be there, rather than wandering around the room, hoping that you're going to bump into somebody who's going to be relevant to you or appropriate, a potential prospect, you can find that out in advance. So you should go into your networking event with a short list of all the people that you know that you want to talk to. So engage people before they go in. So if you see somebody's coming to an event, send them a connection request on LinkedIn if they're not already connected to you. If they are, just message them. But basically you say, oh, hi, Fred. I see you're going to be attending the networking event at such and such next Friday. I'm going to be there. Looking forward to meeting you. Words to that effect. So you can engage with people before you even get there. So when you get to the event, it's not a cold conversation. You already have connected with that person. You say, oh, hi, Fred. Hi, I'm Justin. And we connected on LinkedIn, or I've messaged you on LinkedIn. So use social media before you get there. And then, as we were just saying, use social media after you've been to the event to post about it, to tag people, to make comments. So don't just do it yourself, but obviously look out for the people who were at the event that you want to talk to. They may well post about the event themselves. If they do, then go on and comment on their posts. So they're getting to know you. And remember, if you do post on social media, got to be an absolute minimum of 5 words. Don't even think about liking something, because that means nothing to any of the algorithms. So if you're on social media, minimum of 5 words, something worthwhile saying. But that will establish the relationship. And of course, if they've gone to the trouble of posting and you're commenting on their post, you're helping them to get wider visibility for their post. So you're doing them a favor, and they will be aware of that.
Oh, that is really good point. That also connects really well with our next question, which is how overcoming networking anxiety and becoming more confident in approaching and engaging with new people. So if we follow your instructions and do some kind of relationship in advance through social media, we are on that way.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's a great one. If you're worried about approaching people you've never met before, you need to do that homework in advance, make contact with them before the event, so that by the time you go to the event and speak to them, hopefully they know who you are. And when you introduce yourself, they'll say, oh, hi, yes, you're so-and-so. So, but to be honest, the best strategy for overcoming networking anxiety, to becoming more confident in approaching people, is practice. We are all born with the ability to do anything that we want to do. The only thing that stops us from doing things is our own self-beliefs. So everybody in the world is perfectly capable of turning up to a networking event, engaging people, and having conversations with them. The only thing that might potentially stop them is their self-belief. And the best way to overcome self-belief, apart from developing an affirmation which says, I am a brilliant networker, is to practice. So go to as many networking events as you can and practice talking to people. Use any social occasion as an opportunity to practice engagement, because that is the best way to overcome anxiety about it. Because very soon you'll realize that actually you can do it, and not only can you do it, but actually people like talking to you. So why would you be nervous? So the next question is, how can I effectively manage my time and prioritize my interactions to ensure I make the most of a networking event? And again, this comes back to planning. So we've already talked about how you should try to research the people who are planning to come to the event and identify the ones who you most want to talk to, the ones who look like they're going to be the most obvious prospects for you. So do that in advance. So you've got your hit list of people that you want to talk to based on the people who you think are going to be there. So the second thing is prioritizing your time within the event. So you need to have a little bit of a script. You need to know what you're going to say to people. And the absolutely key thing with any networking event is you need to have a script to disengage with people that you're talking to. Because what very often happens at networking events, and no matter how well prepared you are, we're all guilty of doing this because we hate to disappoint people. We don't like to upset people. We find ourselves talking to somebody who we thought might be a prospect. We've been talking to them for 5 minutes. We've realized that actually they're not actually a suitable prospect for our business. So how do you escape without insulting them? How do you stop that conversation and make sure that you can move on to the next person? So have some little scripts that are ready for you to do that. So think about asking for their business card. If people haven't already offered you their business card, always ask them for theirs. for the very simple reason that if you ask somebody for their business card, well, first of all, they're going to give you one because you've expressed an interest in finding out more about them and the business. But also, if you ask for their business card, they will very probably ask you for one in return. And that's a much more nuanced way of getting your business card into their pocket than simply going up to them and saying, "Oh, can I give you my card?" Which is starting to become a sort of a direct sales approach. So once you've found out what they do, if you want to disengage, you can do things like so. And if you particularly you do want to follow up with them, you might say, "Can I have your business card, please? Because you never know, I might be able to help you. I might have some clients that are interested in what you do. And I'd be up for a 20-minute or so telephone conversation to find out a bit more with you. So can I have your business card, please?" They'll give you the business card. You've created a natural pause in the conversation. And then you say, "I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I'll give you a call later in the week." So you've got their card, they've got yours, and you've said you're going to follow up with them, and you've disengaged. And now you can go off and do something else, speak to another person. If it's somebody that you don't want to follow up, then a question, a statement or something like, "I've really enjoyed our conversation. You mentioned earlier that you want to speak to digital marketing experts. If I bump into any, would you like me to pass them your way?" And they'll say, "Yes, please." And you say, "Great, I will do. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event." And again, you've created an opportunity to leave, but you need to have a script that you know for ending the conversations that you don't want to continue. Otherwise, you'll end up wasting time and not getting around all the people who you could be talking to who might be potential prospects. So managing your time, keep an eye on the time. If a networking event is 2 hours long, work out how many people you can realistically see in that time frame. Allocate whatever it is, 5 minutes, 10 minutes per conversation, and make sure you keep an eye on the clock, because once you've got to your 5 or 10 minutes, even if you're doing really well with that person and you're really enjoying the conversation, you need to break off and go and look to other people. Because if you got to the point where you're really enjoying it, the probability is that you're both engaging, and they will be very happy to talk to you outside of the event. So think about your time and think about all the other people in the room. You can always tell whether somebody's really engaging with you or not by looking at their eyes, because if you see them darting around at a networking event, it means they're scanning the room looking for the next person, because they've already shut you off and they're thinking about, okay, who do I need to go and talk to? That's actually quite a good signal to you to end the conversation rather than causing them embarrassment. And then you'll both be very happy to go off and engage with other people. But yeah, plan your time. You need to plan the event before you get there. You need to plan how you're going to spend your time when you are there. You need to have scripts that you can use both to engage with people and to disengage with them. And then you need to have the follow-up already planned so that you know what you're going to do to everybody that you've met there, whether it be a postcard, a phone call, whether it be engaging on social media, etc. So another question, are there any specific techniques or tips for networking in different industries or target markets that I should be aware of? That's actually quite a difficult question. And to be honest, I don't think there are. At the end of the day, everybody you're talking to is a human being, presumably. And we, as human beings, we all respond in the same way. It doesn't matter whether we work in the motor trade, whether we're a builder, whether we're an IT support company owner, a solicitor or an accountant, we're still human. So I don't think there are any particular different techniques that you would use. The only thing you might want to do is in that introductory conversation, in those questions, or when you're first engaging with somebody, if you're in a networking event that is for a particular industry, you might want to work out a couple of questions that are industry specific, or a couple of responses. So when somebody says, "What do you do?" try to come up with a response with an outcome that you know is going to be relevant to the type of businesses that are going to be in the room. But other than that, it's the same thing. So we're rapidly coming to the end of the half hour. The final question is, how can I build and maintain a network of strategic partnerships within my industry through networking events? There are a couple of suppositions there, which I want to just explore. So, strategic partnerships within my industry, how can I build and maintain that network through networking events? So, the first thing you need to do is to think about what networking events are most relevant to the people within your network, the people with whom you have these strategic partnerships. Because once you've been to one or two networking events, you'll soon realize that they attract different audiences. Some networking events are full of solopreneurs. They tend to be mostly one-man bands. Other networking events have larger businesses in. They might be the more formal things, perhaps organized by the FSB or the Chamber of Commerce or somebody like that. Other ones follow quite rigid schedules and agendas. Classic example of that is BNI, where the entire meeting is organized according to a very tight timetable. So think about the appropriateness of a particular networking event for the people in your network that you're trying to maintain relationships with or partnerships with. Only invite them to the networking events where you know that they're going to derive a benefit from it. The other thing to think about is if you're inviting somebody who's in your partnerships to come to a networking event, don't just tell them, oh, would you like to come to a networking event? There'll be lots of people there. Because by and large, they won't want to come, because that could potentially be a waste of their time. If you can identify one or two people who you know are going to be at that networking event, whose businesses complement the person with whom you have this strategic partnership, talk about that. So, for example, in my BNI chapter, we have a financial advisor. We don't have a will writer. Financial advisors love will writers and vice versa. They give each other a huge amount of business. So if I'm trying to invite a will writer, and in fact I did this last week, to come to my BNI meeting, I don't say, oh, come along to the BNI meeting, there'll be 20 people there and you can tell them all about your business. I say, come to my BNI meeting. Steve is there. He's an IFA and he's always looking for will writers to support him, because invariably when he's talking to his clients, one of the first questions he's going to ask them is, do you have a will? And if they do have a will, how up to date is that will? And invariably, probably 50% of his clients need a new will because they either haven't got one or the one they've got is incredibly old. So think about hooks again for inviting people to your networking events. Think about the appropriateness of the networking event. Is it going to suit that type of person, that type of business? Are they going to meet the right type of people when they get there for what they want? If you can do that, then you will soon build a network of strategic partnerships. Good.
Oh, really, really interesting, huh? This is a whole word.
Yeah.
Networking is a whole word.
Yeah, and so this goes back to the point I made at the very beginning. Networking looks easy, but to do it well, it's not easy, and you have to plan. You need to anticipate all the things we've talked about over the course of this last half hour, so that people, you know who's going to be there, you know what you want to say to them, you've got your introductions and your exits all worked out in your head, so you know what you're going to say, and you've got all the follow-ups that you're going to use after the event to make sure that you then really engage and have subsequent conversations with the people that you want to.
Okay, Justin, thank you. Thank you very much for your time and for all this information and for answering all those questions. Thank you so much.
That's all right. That's my pleasure.
Okay, then take care. Do you have anything that you want to say? Anything else?
No, that was it. All I will say is actually, before I came along to do the Q&A session today, I was at a networking event. I made a number of good connections, and so part of my job this afternoon now is to get into the follow-up stage and to now engage these people whilst the memory of the meeting is still warm. So not waiting till next week, but doing it now, so they know who I am because they met me this morning.
Oh, okay, good, really good point. Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Right.
you.
Thank you, Karen. It's been my pleasure.